Hello and welcome back to Forza Horizon 5 with the brand new Lamborghini Aventador SVJ around Monaco-ish. This is one of the Event Lab creations. It's incredibly detailed. There's a whole, I have the share code, but you made a video about it. I don't remember the YouTuber. I'll try to include the link to the original video, which has everything in it. But it was an incredibly exhaustive effort because, I'm going to be real, I messed around with this thing. The creator, it sort of sucks. You can't save your progress and come back to it. They carried that over from Horizon 4. That was a colossal misstep. But anyway, this track is very good. It's very bumpy because there's no smooth transitions between angles, like descents and ascents, and flat terrain. So it's very bumpy for Monaco, and you might have noticed that there is the small matter of the ravine for the start line, because you can't put the start line on props. You have to use a base existing one, so that's not ideal either. But apart from that, it's actually a very good recreation. There are two problems with it though that really hampered this challenge that I set out to do. I did not realize would be a challenge initially. One, the actual road surface is a little bit glitchy. None of these problems are the creator's fault, it's the actual game's fault. So the props have contact markers, have little contact boxes. And sometimes, depending on the vehicle, if you hit it at just the right angle, it will upset the car. So you're driving straight, you hit nothing, and it just bolts you to the left or bolts you to the right. That's very difficult to recover from, spontaneously veering off left, like I have a suspension failure or something. The other problem that's much more severe and nearly drove me to quit this challenge while we're trying to get all these lap times sorted out, is the walls also have hit markers. So if you graze them or come close to them more than, if you're really cutting it fine like you want to on a hot lap, you can get stuck on nothing. And it's one of the most infuriating things I think I've ever experienced in this game. But anyway, the Aventador here is going to be our target to beat. It's a stage time, it's not technically the start and finish line. In order to avoid that ravine, we're just doing a standing start and then going to the previous checkpoint just in front of the ravine. So it's like 90% of Monaco, we're avoiding the start-finish straight. We're going to try and see what vehicle can beat the Aventador SVJ for the cheapest amount of money spent on it. It's a good old-fashioned budget challenge. Is the Aventador maybe a little bit easy to beat? Well, sort of. It's 500,000 credits, and it is still an impressive vehicle, make no mistake, but it's not on race tires. It's not like the IDR, which is 250,000 credits and on race tires, like in Horizon 4. This is a road car, a very high qualified road car. It held the lap record of the Nürburgring, but it's on road tires. It is all-wheel drive and has 780 horsepower, but it's, heavy at 3,400 pounds, relative speaking. So, on paper, it seems easy to beat. In practice, trying to get the money down to as low as possible while still beating it, that is where we run into the challenge. Either way, the Aventador here did a pretty impressive time, all things considered, of 1:15.25. That is our benchmark time to beat, and this was the only logical starting place. If you want to beat a Lamborghini, you go to Ferrari. They're arch rivals for a reason. And the 488 Pista is the equivalency of the SVJ in many ways. I know the Aventador is technically higher on the supercar scale than the 488, but they're yin and yang in many ways. And this had its challenges for sure. It's a lot lighter, which is nice, but it's less powerful, and it's rear-wheel drive, and it does not have the crazy Lamborghini ALA system over the Zero. But it is 180,000 credits cheaper at 320,000 credits. And you know what? Credit where it's due, the 488 Pista is really good to drive. Also, I realize it has more than 700, it has 711 horsepower, so it's still down on the Aventador, but it's not as down as 100 or whatever I said. Either way, that's not the important thing about the Pista. The important thing is it's really good behind the wheel. Like, driving it is very nice. Much better than the Aventador. The Aventador got a bit of understeer because of the all-wheel drive and just the sheer weight of it. It did not want to turn in on this very technical course. The Ferrari had no problems at all. It was a very nice car to drive. And you know what? It beat it. Just. I'm talking, the Aventador did a 1:15.2. The Ferrari did a 1:15.18. It was less than a tenth of a second faster. But it was faster, damn it. It was faster. So, yeah. All in all, 488 is a much better car to drive, although if you want to do a drag race or anything that's not Monaco, the Aventador would probably be the better choice. But the turn-in for the 488 is just so much better, and it can carry so much speed through that second half where you're trying to go through the slalom. It was fantastic at that. But I figure we could go cheaper. And I'm going to be honest. If you wanted to throw in a hypercar, or indeed any sort of car, including the IDR from Horizon 4, you go to the Ultima GTR 1020. It's its own legend at this point. Ultimas have always been OP on a budget in the Forza games, and the GTR is no exception. It's lighter than the Ferrari by a lot. It's 2,500 pounds, 2,800 pounds, something crazy like that. It is rear-wheel drive, but unlike the Ferrari, which has a measly 700 horsepower, the GTR has 1,020. Yeah, it's a beast. It's simple. It's a big old supercharged V8 mounted to a kit car with a big wing on it. So it's not as advanced as the Aventador or the Ferrari, but it's a hell of a lot quicker. And it's only 300,000 credits, which is much cheaper than both the Ferrari and especially the Aventador. Yeah, it humiliated everything on this list. Even the built cars they get to later stood no chance. Nothing came close to the Ultima. Nothing by a mile. I'm talking, it did a 111.9. It was nearly 4 seconds faster than the Aventador. 4 seconds is insane. There are very few vehicles that are 4 seconds a lap faster than a $500,000 supercar, if not hypercar. That's insane. The Ultima blows my mind every time I drive it. It's the OP budget car for a reason. It's more expensive than it was in Horizon 4 and in the previous Forza games, but it doesn't matter because it's simply insane. But I thought I could do better still. Enter the Porsche 911 GT3 RS from 2019. I love this vehicle. It's fantastic to drive. It's one of my favorite handling cars in all of Forza, for that matter, for bone stock for sure. It's an incredible vehicle. And for 250,000 credits, it's a lot cheaper than the Ultima. However, it couldn't beat the Aventador, which surprised me. It really did, because the 911 is a brilliant handling car. However, there is one key issue with it that I was not expecting. It wheelies. Yeah. You see, although Porsche managed to fix the handling of a rear-engine vehicle and make it less likely to wheelie or lift up the front end, in Forza, when you hit a bump at high speed in a 911, the weight transfer actually takes the front wheels off the ground completely, and then you don't steer at all. So that definitely didn't help, which meant I needed to upgrade it with race tires, so full-on slicks instead of the semi-slicks. Are the same price, so obviously go for the slicks in this situation. And race suspension to try and counter that lift as much as possible, and it worked a lot. Just those two upgrades, it cost about 281,400 credits. Okay? It's still cheaper than the Ultima by just under 20,000 credits, but I was a bit surprised. It wasn't much slower than the Aventador. It did a 1:15.8 or something like that, but it wasn't quick enough. So, To show you how good this vehicle is, once you put it on race tires and race suspension, the time went from a 1:15.9, 1:15.8, all the way down to 1:13.8. It shaved 2 seconds off of its lap time, with just 2 upgrades. That's pretty damn impressive. Still, it's naturally aspirated flat 6, not a lot of horsepower. It's 200 horsepower down on the Aventador, and half the horsepower of the Ultima, but it's all in the handling, and the 911 GT3 RS is really freaking good in the corners. Really freaking good. However, this is apparently better. At least it is now. The Ariel Atom 500 V8. I was a little scared about this one, because in previous Forza games, the Atom has always been notoriously difficult and unwieldy to drive. It's very twitchy, it's very wheel spinny, it's very fast, but it's not easy to get that lap time. But in Horizon 5, it's very easy. I really liked how the Atom drove. It surprised me. It genuinely did. And at 200,000 credits, it's almost 100,000 cheaper than the Porsche, and it's, 40% the price of the Aventador. And you know what? Bone stock, the Atom beat it. Doing a 1:12.8. It's the second fastest lap we'll have for the rest of the day. It's still, I should emphasize, the Ariel Atom V8, one of the craziest, maddest cars ever to go around the top of your test track, was still over a second slower than the Ultima, just for some context. But yeah, the Atom V8, fantastic car. It really surprised me, because I've always had this mentality from previous games that it's a twitchy, undrivable death machine that gets a lot of wheel spin. But on this, it was not. It was easy to drive. I checked to make sure I didn't upgrade it accidentally, and I didn't. It was completely bone stock, and it still decimated everything short of the Ultima. So, I don't know what Forza did, what Turn 10 did, to the handling files of the Atom, but they did a really freaking good job. I really like how that car drives. So, yeah. Atom V8, top marks. Top marks across the board. We go back to the sort of road-based track cars and away from the pure track cars. I'll come back later. But in the meantime, we head back to the road cars with the ACR Viper from 2016. That is the only car that sort of rivals the 911 in terms of handling. The ACR Viper is, again, a legendary vehicle for its handling. Very different from the Porsche. While the Porsche relies on German ingenuity and innovation and, changes and tweaks, Dodge just put a massive wing on it, massive rear tires, adjustable suspension, and a truck engine, and said, that'll do. It's a beast. Now, it's a beast that did need some upgrades, though. It cost $150,000 stock, and it needed $15,000 worth of upgrades, so the total price was $165,750 credits. And it was a decent way off of the Aventador, surprisingly. Maybe it's because it's not very quick. I mean, the gear ratios are nice for the straightaways and whatnot, but it is a bit sluggish on the acceleration just because of the long gear ratios and the rear-wheel drive. And it's not the lightest, although it is lighter than the Aventador. But critically, it's got a lot more aero than the Aventador, and it's, 100 horsepower down. 650 versus 770. So that doesn't help. Now, you think Monaco is a very handling-focused track, and it is, but there are still a lot of flat-out or nearly flat-out sections, including a long, flat-out acceleration zone up a hill, so that can really hurt your car if it's not quick enough. And that's what ultimately did the Viper in. Now, granted, it can overcome that with some race tires, and I think I dropped the weight down. That's what I did. I cut the weight down to under 2,800 pounds, and I put race tires on it. And that did it. Yeah, that about did it. Because, sure, it doesn't have the straightaway speed, but with less weight, it's better handling, and it's quicker accelerating. And with race tires and the aero kit, it's simply unbeatable in the corners, barring the Atom and the Ultima. So, yeah, it did a 114.46. So, again, very, very good vehicles used in terms of handling. I really like how all of these cars handle. Well, except for the next one. You see, the next one was interesting. It was the MG Metro 6R4, the Group B rally car. It's the cheapest of the Group B monsters. I think short of the Ford RS200, I think that's roughly similarly priced, but the Metro is the Metro. Well, sort of. I mean, does it look like an MG Metro to you? Not really, but it technically is. And on paper, it's very quick. It's just over 100,000 credits. It's all-wheel drive, one of the very few all-wheel drive cars we have today. And it's got a naturally aspirated 400 horsepower V6. So it's very light, decently powerful, and all-wheel drive. And it is very quick accelerating, especially given how much horsepower it has. The problem is, short wheelbase is very bad. It's not very fun in the corners at all. I hated driving this thing. It's so twitchy. It's everything that I feared the Atom would be, embodied in a car. Even with the funky wings that I love, it was not quick. So it did require a fair few upgrades, all the way up to 141,750 credits. And it still only just beat it. The Aventador did a 115.2, the Metro did a 114.96. So it only beat it by about 0.3 of a second. But again, like the Ferrari, a win is a win. I'm gonna take it. And I always loved the Metro. It's terrible to drive, and I don't like driving it, but it's such a weird car for an epic era of rallying. The fact that this rally car can exceed or keep up with a Viper ACR, a Ferrari 488 Pista, and an Aventador SVJ speaks volumes to just how insane that era was. And, you know, again, with some race tires, a twin-turbo setup for 1,800 credits, and max tire widths, it's not bad. I also think I had to upgrade the brakes as well, if I recall, because brakes were a bit tricky on that vehicle, stock. So, yeah. Running a vehicle from the 80s, not good enough. Surprisingly good for the time period and the class, but without a fair few modifications, it was not coming anywhere close to that Aventador. We're now entering what I like to call the American-dominated section. There's a few more non-American cars, but they're becoming more popular as the prices get cheaper and cheaper. And we have the Chevrolet C7 Corvette Z06. Not the ZR1, the ZR1's 250,000 credits. The Z06 is just 110,000. Much more reasonable. And it's only got 100 less horsepower, and it's got a lot less handling. But I can easily upgrade the handling for, well, not 140,000 credits. So it's definitely a price saver to get the Z06. And this vehicle really irritated me. The first, the stock car, was about 3 seconds off the pace of the Aventador, and it was not quick. This was the last car I actually tried stock, pretty much. One of the last cars. There's an oddball I'm coming up to pretty soon. But this was the last one I tried stock, because it was still mid-S1 class, so I think I would give it a try, and it was miles off the pace. So I went to the upgrade shop, spent about 134,000 credits, and I came within 0.1 seconds of the Aventador, and I couldn't progress any further. So I had to go to the upgrade shop again, and then I was able to do a 114.2. But it took 135,600 credits, and way too much of my time. Like I said, the walls on this track were brutal to me. I actually had to take a break. I unlocked the Aventador on Thursday, and I didn't finish all of the runs until Saturday. This was torture. But anything for you guys. And the Corvette, again, standard treatment, race tires, full aero, race brakes, the usual 9 yards that we've done with the Viper and with the Porsche and with the Metro. It also got a little bit of power. I didn't have a twin turbo or a supercharger option because it's already got a supercharger on the LS V8. So, a little bit unfortunate there. You just do with the camshafts upgrade, that's the best value for money in that regard. Yeah, 114.2. 135,000 credits is not bad at all. That's actually very good. But I hate this car. It was very close to beating it, and I couldn't do it, and it took me forever. If this was Horizon 4, then I would simply bring out the Lotus 340R and call it a day. I mean, the 340R beat the Jesco around a handling track for less money, for less than 100,000 credits, I think. The 340R is unstoppable, except for the fact it's not in Forza. Not in Horizon 5, at least, for some reason. Same thing with the Vauxhall VX220. Also, a very OP car for budget builds, and it wasn't here, which really makes me sad for this challenge. But it meant I got to use the Lotus Elise S190 from 1999. It's a lot more expensive than the 340R, 81,000 credits base price. But at the end of the day, it's a Lotus. And on its first round of upgrades, about 100,000 credits is what I spent on it, and I was within a second, which is pretty good. 100,000 credits, and you're within a second of the Aventador. So I threw in a little bit more suspension, I threw in better brakes, whatnot. I could actually shave a little bit more weight out of it, like 100 pounds. Didn't bother to do that because it wasn't worth the money I would have to spend on it, but you could do that, interestingly enough. I don't know what you would shave more out of a Elise 190, but I guess you could in Forza's world. And the second round of upgrades did it, and it ended with a nice, even 123,000 credits on the dot. And it did a 1:14.6, so it's 0.4 of a second quicker. Actually, 0.6 of a second. And again, this does not have much power. It only has about less than 400 horsepower in this, which is very little. However, it weighs just 1,300 pounds, which is very, very light. It's half the weight of the Aventador. Literally less than half of the weight of the Aventador. It's the lightest car here, including the Atom, which is sort of crazy, and it's not anywhere near quick enough for accelerating, even with the very good power-weight ratio of 1,300 pounds and 390 horsepower, something like that. But it's not the greatest accelerating. It's not going to be the Aventador down the first uphill straightaway, let's put it that way. However, it doesn't matter, because I can carry so much corner speed because of the no weight and the full aero kit that it really doesn't matter. Now, I don't have I didn't bother to do the wing. I tried the wing to see if it helped, but for 5,000 credits, the rear wings did not provide enough benefit, in my mind. I can manage the oversteer, which is what the rear wing is designed to do for in this game, sort of. It helps with that in many ways, and it helps carry more speed. It just wasn't really beneficial for lap time, what I saw, so I took that off. Saved me about $5,000. It was good in the end. Yeah, the Lotus Elise, disappointed we don't have the 340R, but the 190 not too shabby. But remember the outlier I have been hinting at for a while? Yeah, that's the Vol, the 05RR, because that is 100,000 credits, almost top of S1 class, racing slicks on it. It's got the special Michelin tires that are super grippy. It's only got about 390 horsepower, so it's similar to the Lotus. It's a little bit heavier, but it's got full aero from the factory. It's got full slicks from the factory. And that means this completely stock 100,000 credit car did a 1:14.46. So it was faster than the Lotus. It was faster than the Aventador, than the Ferrari. The only thing it didn't get beaten by, the only thing it got beat by, I should say, is the 911 and the Atom and the Viper. That's pretty impressive. They actually tied the Viper down to the 100th of a second. Both of them did a 1:14.46. So that's kind of interesting, but we're not worried about the actual times. Otherwise, the Ultimate will be simply unstoppable. We're going for price here, and 100,000 credits is 20% of the Aventador. It's 65,000 less than the Viper. That is an insanely cheap car. In terms of actual effort you had to put into building a car, the Vol is the easy winner here, because it's the cheapest at 100,000, and you don't have to build it at all. It's completely stock. So that really surprised me. I'm not gonna lie. The Vol, I threw it in there because of the PI and the price. And it's Mexican, we're in Mexico, it was sort of fitting. Sort of their whole complete picture, full circle thing. And it decimated everything for the money. It was an incredible car to drive. It was very easy to build, too. I liked it a lot. I didn't have to do any extra runs. I didn't have to try to build it. I didn't have to spend any of my money. It was nice. All around a win. But the Volt left me with a conundrum. How are we going to spend less than 100,000 credits on a car, including upgrades, to beat the Aventador? Because once you get down to that level, most of the cars are in A class or B class or below. There are very few S1 class cars, and this is the only one that actually seemed decent. The 2016 Chevy Camaro ZL1, not the 1LE, the 1LE is 105,000 credits, the ZL1, just plain and simple. It's 60,000 credits, much more reasonable. It doesn't have the aero, it doesn't have the advancements of the 1LE. But again, like the Z06, if you get the cheaper version, you can put the slick tires on it, you can put the aero kit on it, and it's much better for less money. It's a fantastic car. And you can get a huge amount of horsepower. It already has 650 horsepower, 650 torque. I really don't need any more. So I just cut the weight down as much as I could. Racing suspension, racing brakes, whole 9 yards. And it didn't really make much progress after the first build. It was about a second off the pace, so I added some more parts to it, to up to 94,000 credits, and it was still a second off the pace, so I was confused. So I actually started tinkering around with the gearbox a little bit. I got a sport gearbox to try and fix the ratio so we get faster accelerating, and that did the trick. It did a 114.8. Final price was 97,700 credits. Yeah. Not only were we cheaper than the Volt, we are now less than 100,000 credits for a car faster than a 500,000 credit SVJ. That is insane. And it didn't actually require that many upgrades. It cost less than 30,000 for the upgrades. Well, 37,000. Yeah. Camaro, doing good. I also tried the Shelby, but that was more expensive a base price, and just the race tires brought it more expensive than the Camaro, so the ZL1, sorry Mustang fans, the ZL1 would take this one. The title of the second cheapest car was up for contention though, and there were a lot of cars struggling for it, because I started to look at the 25,000 credit options. The 20,000 credit options are useless. They're all C-class and D-class cars. They're hopeless. But the 25,000 credit cars had some gems in it. Had the Golf R. It had the Holden Monaro, the Vauxhall Monaro. And it had the Honda S2000 Club Racer, which is what I went with. It's mid-B class, but that's only because it doesn't have any power. It's a very good handling car. It just has 240 horsepower, so it's pathetically slow in a straight line. However, with a 30,000 credit V8 swap, and then an 1,800 credit Supercharger edition, you can get some serious horsepower. Here's the problem with that, though. The maximum tire sizes of the S2000 are 295s. Which means, no matter what I did, I could not get the power down, and that was really costing me time. So, I had to do another swap. This is the only car that required all three conversions. Forced induction conversion, engine conversion, and a driveline conversion. So this is now all-wheel drive, which means, yes, I have spent almost 50,000 credits just on the conversions, and some brakes, and some suspension, and aero, but it was enough. And because the car was so cheap, the fact I spent 60,000 credits on upgrades didn't matter. So, for 93,550 credits, the S2000 with an all-wheel drive glory did a 113.25. It was exactly 2 seconds faster than the Aventador. It was actually one of the fastest cars of the day, short of the Ariel Atom and the Ultima. That was unexpected. It beat the 911. It's actually the third fastest car of the entire day, and it was the second cheapest. Forza's weird, man. Forza's weird. But not as weird as our winner. Because our winner is the cheapest car in this game, and yet it's one you could not buy from the auto show. You had to win it. And the only reason I'm including this, because they only have rules about you can't get a free car, you can't get auction house, you can't do that. The reason I'm including this is because it gives you a price tag of 15,000 credits on the car selection menu. That car is, of course, the DeLorean DMC12. No, I'm not making this up. One of the worst sports cars in the history of Earth. Is also the fastest sports car you can buy, price to speed ratio. Yeah, this car costs 15,000 credits to buy, air quotes. It's a bit cheaty, I know, but whatever. It has a price tag, give me a break. And once again, this required an engine swap, so 30,000 credit V8, and a whole bunch of other stuff. It had the most power of the entire day, almost 900 horsepower in this thing. But unlike the S2000, for reasons I do not know, the DeLorean could actually handle its power. I mean, the differential was dying. That was its big problem. You saw in the lap that the differential was just killing itself. In fact, I did have to lengthen the gear ratios a little bit because I upgraded the gearbox to try and quell some of that wheel spin, and it topped out at 120, so I did have to tune it. This is the only vehicle I actually had to tune the gears in. Everything else of the tuning was completely stock, but this didn't need it, so I had some speed and reasonable gear ratios. And you know what? For 91,450 credits, it did a 113.8. It's the 5th fastest car of the day, just 0.08 of a second slower than the 911 GT3 RS. And it did require the most amount of builds. It required 3 builds. I was first 2 seconds off the pace, then I was 1 second off the pace, then I was 0.4 of a second off the pace, and I wanted to throw my Xbox out a window, but I persevered. 1 more build later, up to 91,450, and it did it. Only in Forza is the DeLorean the best car. The irony that the bright gold DeLorean DMC12 won a challenge. When I realized this could potentially win, I was really hoping it did. I tried the S2000 last, so the DeLorean was the second to last car I built, and the S2000 didn't do it. I was so happy. I mean, obviously I'm doing everything as fair as possible, but I was really hoping the DeLorean would win, and it did. That makes me so happy. I guess the conclusion we can draw from this is, we know that built is always going to be better than bought. That's just a well-known thing in Forza. However, when your car is so absurdly cheap that it's literally within its own price bracket of 15,000 credits, you can beat everything when it comes to a budgetary level. I mean, if you want to beat everything on a speed level, you get the ultimate GTR and blitz everything by a second and a bit. But in terms of the price, you can't beat the DeLorean DMC12. That, though, will be it for this episode of Forza Horizon 5. I'll be back with more